There was silence in the military courtroom. Such silence that even the general held his breath. Because the 22-year-old young soldier had just shaken the entire system with the words he spoke. The sentence he began with, "I refused the order because," would go down in Army history from that day forward. So what had happened that this young man refused the order of an officer 20 ranks above him? Jake Morrison's story begins in a small town in Arizona. Jake, whose grandfather was a Korean War veteran and father a Vietnam veteran, had known what military discipline meant since childhood. The phrase, "orders come from command," was almost like a family motto in their home. When he turned 18, Jake's dream was clear: join the U.S. Army and become a soldier his family would be proud of. During basic training at Fort Campbell, Jake quickly stood out among his peers. Not only his physical strength, but also his strategic thinking ability and leadership qualities drew attention. Instructors were saying, "This kid has the potential to be an officer." Jake himself knew this, but he wasn't in a hurry. He wanted to gain experience first, then apply to officer school. The day he was promoted to specialist rank, Jake's big dream had come true: he would be sent to Afghanistan. The forward base in Helmand province was exactly the kind of assignment he wanted. Real field experience, real responsibility, and real danger. Jake was eager to prove himself in this mission. When he set foot in Afghanistan in July 2019, Jake was only 22 years old. Forward Operating Base Phoenix in Helmand was like an island built in the middle of the desert. Surrounded by wire fences, filled with watchtowers and military vehicles, this base was home to 300 soldiers. Jake's mission was to work within the intelligence unit and monitor Taliban movements in the region. In the first weeks, everything went as planned. Jake focused on learning from his experienced colleagues and dedicated himself to his work. Especially under the mentorship of Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, he was learning the intricacies of field intelligence. Maria would say, "Jake, don't just take orders here. Think, question, learn." This advice had settled in Jake's mind. In his third month, the event that would change Jake's life occurred. Major Richard Williams had come as a newly assigned officer to the base. Williams constantly emphasized that result-oriented operations needed to be conducted due to pressure from the Pentagon. The 47-year-old Williams was experiencing pressure to advance in his career and was reflecting this pressure onto his subordinates. Williams' management style was very different from the other officers above. He didn't care about details, only cared about numbers. How many operations were conducted per month? How many people were captured? How many weapons were seized? These questions were Williams' sole focus. Jake had realized this approach was dangerous, but he hadn't spoken up yet. At the end of October, an important intelligence report came to Jake's desk. One of the local sources reported that Taliban leader Abu Rashid was hiding in a village in the Marja region. But alongside this information was an important warning: innocent civilians also lived in the village, and it was difficult to distinguish them from the Taliban. Jake especially emphasized this warning when preparing the report. There is a dense civilian population in the target area. Careful examination is required before the operation. Acting hastily could lead to the loss of innocent lives, he wrote. This report would go to Captain Johnson first, then to Major Williams according to normal procedure. The next morning, Jake was called to Captain Johnson's office. Johnson had Jake's report open on his desk and looked thoughtful. "Good work, Jake, but Major Williams wants to do this operation immediately. There's pressure from the Pentagon," he said. Jake replied, "But sir, the risk of civilian casualties is very high." Johnson shook his head. "I know, I have the same concerns. But Major Williams says this operation needs to be done within the week. We need to take the report to him." Jake said, "Understood, sir," while feeling unease in his stomach, but he had a bad feeling inside. That noon, Major Williams called the entire intelligence team to a meeting. Williams slammed Jake's report on his desk, saying, "Good work, Specialist Morrison, but you're making this operation too complicated." Jake replied, "Sir, I'm just reporting the risks." Williams fixed his eyes on Jake. "Specialist, your job is to gather intelligence. Making decisions is my job. And I've decided this operation will be conducted tomorrow night." The other soldiers in the room listened silently. Jake began, "But sir, the preparation time is too short. Civilian casualties." But Williams cut him off. "Specialist Morrison." Williams' voice filled the office. "Are you going to take authority from me? This operation will be conducted tomorrow night. Period." Jake felt his heart beating rapidly but didn't speak up. He just said, "Sir, yes sir." But that night, Jake couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in his bed thinking. This operation could lead to the death of innocent people. And Jake would bear the responsibility for it too. Because he was the one who provided the intelligence. At 3 a.m., he got up from his bed and found Maria Rodriguez. Maria was drinking coffee in the guard booth. "Jake, what happened? Couldn't you sleep?" Maria asked. Jake poured his heart out. He told her about the operation plan, Williams rushing, the civilian casualty risks. Maria remained silent for a long time. Then she said, "Jake, sometimes we have to make difficult decisions in this job. But if your conscience isn't at ease, you should do the right thing." "What is the right thing?" Jake asked. Maria looked at him. "You already know, Jake. Just gather your courage." These words somewhat calmed the storm in Jake's heart. But the next day, he didn't yet know he would make the decision that would change his career. The next day at 6 o'clock, Jake's phone rang. Major Williams' voice made his authority felt even over the phone. "Morrison, come to my office. Now." Jake quickly got dressed in uniform and ran to Williams' office. There, along with Williams, were Captain Johnson and Lieutenant Sarah Chen. Williams pointed to the map on his desk. "Gentlemen, tonight at 2200 hours we're going to Marja. Following Specialist Morrison's intelligence, we'll capture Abu Rashid. This operation will be the biggest blow in the region." Jake felt his insides burning but remained silent. Captain Johnson approached the map. "Sir, isn't the preparation time too short? Normally we do at least 48 hours of preparation for such operations." Williams gave Johnson a sharp look. "Captain, the instructions from the Pentagon are clear. This operation will be conducted tonight." Jake couldn't stand it anymore. "Sir, may I say something?" Williams frowned. "Speak, Morrison." Jake took a breath. "Sir, as I mentioned in the intelligence report, there's a dense civilian population in the target area. A night operation could be very dangerous for innocent civilians." Williams' face reddened. "Morrison, are you going to plan the operation? Your job is to provide data, not make decisions." Jake raised his voice. "Sir, but this data shows that." "Enough." Williams slammed his fist on the desk. "Morrison, you're a specialist. I'm a major. This operation will be conducted as planned. If you're going to have a problem, I'll remove you from duty." Jake replied with his heart beating rapidly. "Sir, innocent people could die. This is against military ethical rules." Williams stood up. "Morrison, are you going to teach me military ethics? I've been in this army for 25 years. Captain Johnson tried to intervene. "Sir, maybe we should consider Morrison's concerns." Williams turned to Johnson. "Captain, do you have the same disease? This operation will start at 2200 hours. Begin preparations." Jake tried one last time. "Sir, can we at least warn local authorities to evacuate civilian areas?" Williams approached Jake. "Morrison, now listen to me. This operation is classified. No one will be warned. If you object to this order, I'll have you court-martialed for insubordination." Jake felt his throat dry up. Court-martial meant military court. The end of his career. But the voice inside him said innocent people's lives were more important. "Sir, I cannot do this." Everyone in the room froze. Williams looked at Jake with disbelieving eyes. "What did you say?" Jake raised his voice. "Sir, I cannot participate in this operation. Innocent civilians could die and I cannot be part of this." Williams was trembling with anger. "Morrison, are you refusing the order now?" Jake answered, standing straight. "Sir, yes sir. I refuse this order." Lieutenant Chen looked at Jake in shock. Captain Johnson put his head in his hands. Williams picked up the phone. "Call the MPs here. Arrest Specialist Morrison. Charge, insubordination." 5 minutes later, military police arrived. Jake was handcuffed and taken to the detention center. Along the way, other soldiers watched him with astonished eyes. Because a 22-year-old soldier had refused a major's order, that night, Jake sat in his cell. The operation was continuing. The voices coming from the radio made Jake's heart race. At 22:30, the first explosion sounds were heard. Jake put his hands on his head and prayed. At 1 o'clock, the operation ended. Jake listened curiously to the news from the radio. "Phoenix Base, this is Alpha Team. Target neutralized." But the voice cut off. Then, "Phoenix Base, there are civilian casualties. Repeat, there are civilian casualties." Jake's heart stopped. What he feared had happened. The next morning, Captain Johnson came to his cell. Johnson's face was pale. "Jake, 3 civilians died. One of them was an 8-year-old child." Jake closed his eyes. I could have prevented it." Johnson shook his head. "No Jake, you did the right thing. But now there's a big problem. Major Williams is going to come after you." In the following days, Jake's situation became complicated. Williams was pushing for Jake to be court-martialed for insubordination. But other soldiers on the base thought Jake had done the right thing. Especially after civilian casualties occurred, it became clear that Jake was right. Maria Rodriguez visited Jake. Jake, there's a big debate here. Some officers think you were right, but Williams is very powerful. Prepare to fight with him. Jake said, Maria, I just did the right thing. I have no regrets. But Williams was determined to crush Jake. He was trying to speed up Jake's court-martial by using his connections at the Pentagon. Because Jake's resistance had shaken Williams' authority. If a soldier could refuse orders, military discipline could collapse, Jake thought while waiting in his cell. He knew he had done the right thing. But his career was over. What would his family think? In his family with military tradition, refusing orders was considered the greatest sin. But Jake felt his conscience was cleared out on the third day. Jake had a surprise visitor. Colonel Michael Thompson was the base commander. Thompson entered Jake's cell and sat down. Morrison, I need to talk to you. Jake stood at attention. Sir, yes sir. Thompson looked at Jake. Morrison, you made a very difficult decision. But I examined your situation. And I can say this, you know what military honor is. Jake was surprised. Sir, I refused an order. This is against military discipline. Colonel Thompson shook his head. Morrison, military service isn't just about taking orders. Sometimes you need to do the right thing too. You showed courage to protect innocent people. Jake felt his eyes filling up. Thompson continued. Morrison, you'll go to court-martial soon. But know that some of us are on your side. Because you showed what a real soldier is. These words had raised Jake's morale. But the biggest test would be in court. 2 weeks later, Jake Morrison's court-martial began. The military courtroom at Fort Campbell had been prepared for such an important case. A jury of 5 officers would determine Jake's fate. The charge was clear: insubordination, refusing an order. Jake's lawyer was Captain Lisa Parker. Parker was an experienced officer lawyer in military law. When they first met, she told Jake, Morrison, this won't be easy. But you did the right thing and I believe this will be proven in court. The prosecutor was Major Stephen Clark. Clark was a close friend of Williams and was determined to punish Jake. In his opening statement, he said, Specialist Morrison disregarded military discipline by refusing an order. This conflicts with the Army's fundamental principles. The first witness was Major Williams. Williams looked confident when he came to court. I gave Morrison a clear order. He was to participate in the operation. But he disregarded my authority and refused. Williams was trying to make Jake look bad. Captain Parker challenged Williams in cross-examination. Major Williams, weren't Specialist Morrison's concerns about civilian casualties justified? Williams became uncomfortable. Operational risks always exist. But this is not justification for refusing an order. Well, Major, 3 civilians died. One was an 8-year-old child. Weren't Morrison's concerns justified? Parker's question created tension in the courtroom. Williams replied, operational losses are unfortunately inevitable. The second witness was Captain Johnson. Johnson supported Jake by describing Williams' pressure. Morrison had legitimate concerns about civilian casualties. The operation was planned too hastily, he said. This testimony was an important development in Jake's favor. The third witness was Maria Rodriguez. Maria described Jake's character and motivation. Morrison has always focused on doing the right thing. That night, he listened to the voice of his conscience, she said. Maria's words had impressed the jury. On the 4th day, Jake himself took the witness stand. Prosecutor Clark tried to pressure Jake. Morrison, do you think refusing a major's order was right? Jake answered calmly. Sir, I considered the oath to protect innocent people more important. Military ethical rules tell us to minimize civilian casualties. If I had carried out that order, more innocent people could have died. Clark continued. But you're a soldier, Morrison. Being a soldier means taking orders. Jake straightened up. Sir, being a soldier isn't just about taking orders. Being a soldier means doing the right thing. And that night, the right thing was protecting innocent people. Captain Parker asked Jake supportive questions. Morrison, what did you feel that night? Jake turned his eyes to the jury. I was scared, sir. I knew my career could end. But I thought about those children's faces. Protecting them was more important than the order. On the 5th day, a surprise witness came. Colonel Thompson was called to court. Thompson defended Jake's behavior. Morrison has shown the true spirit of soldiering. Sometimes doing the right thing requires refusing an order. Thompson's words had a great impact in the courtroom. A colonel's support of Jake had changed the course of the case. Even some jury members were looking at Jake with sympathy. On the 6th day, the last witness was called. This witness was someone no one expected, retired General Patricia Hayes. Hayes was a human rights expert at the Pentagon and had heard about Jake's case. She had come to court of her own will. What Morrison did was military courage, Hayes said. According to the Nuremberg principles, soldiers can also act according to their conscience. Morrison applied this principle. Hayes' words had fundamentally changed the case. On the seventh day, closing arguments were made. Prosecutor Clark defended the traditional approach. Military discipline is the foundation of the Army. Morrison's behavior shakes this foundation, he said. Captain Parker strongly defended Jake. Morrison has protected true military values. He didn't just refuse an order. He protected innocent people. This is the highest military virtue. The jury withdrew to make their decision. Jake was very nervous while waiting. Maria, Captain Johnson, and even Colonel Thompson remained in court to support Jake. 2 hours later, the jury returned. Jury President Colonel Robert Mitchell stood up. In this case, we evaluated Specialist Morrison's actions. Refusing an order is normally a military discipline violation. Jake felt his heart stop. However, Mitchell continued, Morrison's motivation was to protect civilian lives. This is consistent with military ethical rules. As a jury, we acquit Morrison. The courtroom exploded. Jake felt his eyes filling up. Captain Parker hugged Jake. Maria was crying. Even Colonel Thompson was smiling. Major Williams left the courtroom. His face was red, he looked angry. Because Jake's acquittal had shaken Williams' authority. But Jake was now free. That night, Jake left his cell. His friends greeted him. Jake, you made history, Maria said. Now soldiers know they can act according to their conscience. Jake looked at the stars. He had gone through a difficult process but had done the right thing. Now, other soldiers would remember Jake's example when they faced similar situations, but the story wasn't over yet. Jake's courage had caused great debates throughout the Army. And Major Williams was making revenge plans. Jake Morrison's acquittal was a turning point not only for him but for the entire Army. The news was quickly spread by the military press. Headlines saying, "Young soldier risked his career for his conscience and was proven right," appeared in newspapers. The Pentagon. Jake's case caused long debates. Some generals were concerned that military discipline would weaken. But others argued that Jake's behavior was correct from a military ethics standpoint. General Patricia Hayes organized a meeting at the Pentagon. The Morrison case requires us to review our military ethics education. Soldiers are not just robots taking orders. They are humans with conscience, she said. As a result of this meeting, an important decision was made. The Military Ethics Board issued a new directive: soldiers can question and refuse orders that could cause civilian casualties. This directive was the fruit of Jake's struggle. Changes also occurred at Forward Operating Base Phoenix in Helmand. Major Williams came under great pressure after Jake's acquittal. Other officers began criticizing Williams' hasty decisions. Colonel Thompson called Williams to his office. "Major, after the Morrison case, we need to review your leadership style. Your hasty decisions conflict with military morality," he said. Williams went on the defensive. "Sir, I only implemented orders from the Pentagon. Morrison's behavior was against military discipline." Thompson shook his head. "Major, discipline is important. But human life is more important." As a result, Williams' assignment at Phoenix Base was terminated. He was assigned to a desk job at the Pentagon. This meant a major regression in Williams' career. Because field command was very important for promotion, Jake Morrison, on the other hand, was unexpectedly declared a hero. He began to be recognized not only at Phoenix Base but throughout the Army. Young soldiers began following Jake's example. They saw that it was possible to act according to their conscience, but Jake wasn't seeking fame. He had simply done the right thing. While talking to Maria Rodriguez, he said, "I'm not a hero, Maria. I just listened to my conscience." Maria smiled. "Jake, sometimes listening to your conscience is the greatest heroism. You became an example to thousands of soldiers." Jake began to understand the magnitude of what he had experienced while thinking about these words. A few weeks later, Jake received an important offer. A general from the Pentagon called Jake. "Morrison, we invite you to work in the military ethics education program. It's important for you to share your experiences with other soldiers," he said. Jake accepted this offer. He now began giving military ethics seminars at different bases. He taught young soldiers, taking orders is important, but also listen to your conscience. At one seminar, a young soldier asked Jake, "Sir, refusing orders is very scary. Our careers could end." Jake replied with understanding. "Yes, it's scary. I was scared too. But sometimes doing the right thing is more important than fear." Jake's story entered textbooks at military academies. This event, known as the Morrison case, became one of the fundamental topics of military ethics courses. Young officer candidates studied Jake's courage and conscientious decision. A year later, Jake received an even greater honor. The Military Human Rights Board gave Jake the Moral Courage Award. This award was the most prestigious award given to soldiers showing conscientious courage. At the award ceremony, Jake's family was also present. His father, Vietnam veteran Robert Morrison, was proud of his son. "Jake, you protected our family's honor. This is what real soldiering is," he said. Jake's grandfather, Korean War veteran William Morrison, also spoke at the ceremony. "Jake fought for the values I fought for. Protecting innocent people is the greatest military duty," he said. During the ceremony, Jake's old friends had also come. Maria Rodriguez had now become Sergeant Major. Captain Johnson had been promoted to Major. Colonel Thompson had become General. Jake's speech was the most effective moment at the ceremony. "I just listened to my conscience. But this decision changed my life. Because doing the right thing is not always easy. But it's necessary." At the end of his speech, Jake added, "Soldiering isn't just about taking orders. It's about protecting humanity. And sometimes this requires making the most difficult decisions." Major Williams, on the other hand, followed a completely different path during this process. He wasn't satisfied with his desk job at the Pentagon. Jake's success was a great blow to Williams' ego. Finally, he decided to retire early. No one attended Williams' retirement ceremony. His 25-year career had faded in the face of Jake's courage. That day Williams understood how right Jake had been, but it was too late. Jake's story also had a great impact in civil society. Human rights organizations supported Jake. Peace activists began showing Jake as an example. Because Jake had tried to protect humanity even within war. At universities, Jake's case was taught as a case study in ethics classes. Students learned the topic of individual conscience versus obedience to authority. Through Jake's story, Jake wasn't seeking fame, but his story spread worldwide. International peace organizations invited Jake as a speaker. Jake gave the same message in every speech: conscience is the strongest compass. A few years later, Jake finished officer school. He was now Lieutenant Jake Morrison. But although his rank changed, his principles remained the same. He continued teaching young soldiers, "Don't be afraid to do the right thing." Jake's story had an important place in military history. Because he had found the balance between military discipline and human conscience. And this balance had become a guide for future generation soldiers. In conclusion, 22-year-old young soldier Jake Morrison, by refusing an order, had not only listened to his own conscience but had changed the entire military system. The decision he made that night in Afghanistan had affected thousands of soldiers' lives. Jake's story showed what true courage was. Courage wasn't about not being afraid, but about doing the right thing despite fear. And Jake Morrison had made history by showing this courage. Today, there is a military ethics center bearing Jake's name. The Morrison Center for Military Ethics teaches conscientious courage to young soldiers. Jake's legacy continues to inspire future generations, because sometimes, to change the system, it's enough for just one person to say no. Jake Morrison was the person who said that, no. And his courage had made the world a slightly better place.